Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Under 1000. Today I'm going to be doing something slightly different from usual. Recently I took part in an event for queer performers which was held in my former high school called Happy Fest. As part of that performance I read two stories, one which has already been published in the podcast, which was episode 50, and another which was written specifically for the event. I'd like to play the recording of the second reading for you now. I just want to acknowledge that the quality of this may not be as good as other episodes. It was recorded on a mobile phone, so it's not possibly as clear as it would be if I could have recorded it not live. But to me it was something which was really special and important. Being able to perform at my old high school and to read a story which was very meaningful to me and which I don't think I would have been able to do in the past. So without further ado, here is the audio taken from that performance. So this next one, I just wanted to contextualize for you a little bit. I actually used to be a pupil of this school. And it's been 10 years about since I left, so it's been kind of interesting coming back. I was actually here a couple of weeks ago to help out with like some of the performances that are happening tonight, or one of the performances that is happening tonight, and had a lot of feelings about coming back, and I really wanted to get that down on the page, and so that's what my next piece is about. I hope it doesn't seem really, really self-indulgent. I think I've made something that will be enjoyable, but also it's just lots of feelings, so here we go. So this one is called Moving On. It's the same place, but it's not the same. People have come and gone, leaving behind only a scant familiar faces. The chatter still holds the same timbre, but not the same contents. Even the building has changed, warping like wood to the new needs of its occupants. It's all so familiar, and yet this is clearly not my world anymore. In my head, I'd been writing stories of how this would all go. I told myself what my feelings would be to return here, but I told myself wrong. There was no crushing waves of dramatic emotion. It was just a place, like any other. The same, but not the same. Life carries on. I was still writing stories, though, telling myself how things would be, laying out a narrative for my feelings and experiences before they'd even arrived. How would it be to see them, after all, these younger counterparts to myself? The children I imagined now being able to live a life that I had never been able to have. I wanted to see them as some beautiful, shining thing, the future of a liberated world where they could live openly and without a care. And in some small, strange way, I wanted to be jealous of them, of the provisions they were given that I never was, of the joy they were allowed that was never apportioned to me. Like a film script, I saw the finished memories before I'd even had the events to create them. I had it all laid out in my head, and I knew how it was all going to go. But then we met. Life is never a story, even though I may present it as one to you now. You can't plan it, edit it, write it out in advance. You're not free to dictate your own emotions to yourself, or to gloss over the reality presented in front of you. And the reality now in front of me was just teenagers. Like any others. Like I remembered from my own time here. Like new and different people, formed just how they always have been. The same, but not the same. And reality is beautiful in its mundanity. It refuses to be a simple, cohesive narrative, though we may try to force it into one. If you want a nice, clean story, go to the movies. Reality has so much more to offer and to show. It's gossip, text messages, hurt feelings, growing pains, blame on both sides, caring about one another, crying and laughing and discovering so much about yourself. But rarely is it the symbols of hope I wanted it to be. Because despite how much I could say they had it good, and despite the luxuries now afforded to them that I had once dreamed of years ago, being young is still confusing and difficult, even in this changed place. And so they refused to be the perfect beacons of a brighter future for me, spouting lines that told me everything would be all right, that made me wish I could go back and do it all again. Instead, they were just people, gloriously real, complicated, conflicted people. And that was as it should be. I realized that this place hadn't really changed, not so much anyway. The facade was different, the faces, the voices, the discussions. The attitudes had shifted slowly on from my time, all for the better from what I could tell. But the core was the same. A block of bricks and concrete through which we pass and discover something. Rather, it was I that was not the same. The same body, but changed with time. The same voice, but one which speaks differently now. The same thoughts? Perhaps, but time has rearranged them into a newly altered patterns. This place had moved on without me, but in truth, it was much the same. I had moved on from this place, and now I realize that in truth I was much different. I thought that I'd seen something which would make me wish I could go back. I'd felt sure that I would see something that I never had, and that it would leave me wondering how my life could have been, if only it could have been so different. I did see something I never had, but I didn't wish to go back. Because being young is still a hard and confusing process of finding who you're meant to be in this world, often while others stand on the sidelines, telling you what they think your final answer should be. And while these young folks could now rest a little easier that one aspect of themselves might be accepted in this space, it didn't create the stress-free, perfectly happy, simple lives I'd foolishly thought it would. Life isn't one challenge at a time, overcome before moving on to the next in line. I'd mistaken my own past difficulties for a universal problem, which once solved would leave no hardships left to deal with. But while provisions may be made to lessen the burden, there are still challenges left for us all. And so, for all it's worth, I resolved to be happy for them. To enjoy the progress this place had made, and the ways that lives would be different as a result. And to remember that making one thing easier doesn't make for an easy life, and that we still owe each other a kindness in our individual struggles. And in that moment, I was the same, but not the same. I'd learned a new lesson here one last time. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, Nictate, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.